Red Bull and Ferrari are supposedly facing an emergency FIA review over the new Macarena wing, but the evidence behind that claim is already falling apart. The attached source contains 4 regulatory headlines involving Lewis Hamilton, the British Grand Prix, and Pierre Gasly, yet it does not identify one Red Bull component, one Ferrari component, one failed test, or one official emergency review. That means the biggest scandal may not be what the wing does. It may be how unrelated FIA stories were used to create the appearance of a technical crisis. Because until officials name the part, explain the regulation, and confirm the inspection, there is no proven wing scandal. There is only a headline, and a missing piece of evidence that could destroy the entire story. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why this supposed emergency review matters, you have to separate the dramatic headline from the evidence underneath it. The headline suggests that Red Bull and Ferrari are facing immediate technical scrutiny. It suggests the new Macarena wing has triggered concern. And it suggests the FIA has already begun a serious review. But the attached source does not confirm any of those details. It does not identify a Red Bull wing. It does not identify a Ferrari wing. It does not describe the so-called Macarena design. And it does not include an official FIA statement announcing an emergency technical investigation. That gap changes everything. Because an emergency review should leave a clear trail. There should be a named component. A regulation, a test, a concern raised by officials, or a formal response from one of the teams. The source provides none of those things. Instead, it lists 4 separate stories involving FIA decisions. 2 concern Lewis Hamilton and the British Grand Prix. Another concerns a grid penalty after an investigation. And the final story concerns Pierre Gasly regaining a Monaco podium after an Alpine review. Those reports may involve legitimate sporting decisions. But they do not establish a technical case against Red Bull or Ferrari. That distinction is critical. The FIA appears in hundreds of different Formula One stories because it governs the championship. Its name can appear in a penalty decision, a technical inspection, a driver investigation, a protest, an appeal, or a review of race results. But one FIA story does not automatically connect to another. Think of several court cases happening in the same country. One involves a speeding offense. Another involves a contract dispute. A third involves a completely different person. The existence of those cases does not prove that 2 major companies are under emergency investigation. The connection must be shown. Here, it is not. And this is where the phrase Macarena wing becomes so powerful. It sounds technical. It sounds unusual. And because it sounds unfamiliar, it creates immediate curiosity. People assume there must be a special mechanism. A new form of flexibility. A hidden movement. Something the normal tests were not designed to detect. But the source does not explain what the name means. It does not describe how the wing supposedly moves. It does not say whether the concern involves the front wing or the rear wing. And it does not confirm that either Red Bull or Ferrari used the design. So the audience is being asked to react to a technical accusation without being shown the technical object. That is not evidence. It is atmosphere. And atmosphere can be extremely persuasive. Mention Red Bull. Mention Ferrari. Add the FIA. Then use the words emergency review. The story immediately feels serious. It feels official. It feels as though both teams have already been caught. But remove the emotional language, and the structure begins to weaken. There is no confirmed review. No identified part. No failed test. No technical directive. No penalty. No official comment. That does not prove that no technical concern exists anywhere outside the document. It means the document itself does not prove one. And that is the position the evidence forces us to take. But here is where the story becomes more dangerous. Even an unsupported technical accusation can create real pressure. Rival teams may begin asking questions. Fans may assume guilt. Every Red Bull or Ferrari wing update may be treated as suspicious. And every routine FIA inspection may be presented as proof that the emergency review was real. That is how a rumor starts feeding itself. The original claim creates suspicion. The suspicion changes how later events are interpreted. Then those later events are used to support the original claim. It becomes a closed circle. A team introduces a new wing. People say the old one must have failed. A team keeps the same wing. People say it is refusing to cooperate. The FIA checks the car. People say the investigation is confirmed. The FIA does not issue a penalty. People say the authorities are hiding something. At that point, almost any outcome can be used to keep the accusation alive. That is why technical stories require precision from the beginning. What exactly is being reviewed? What does the component allegedly do? Which regulation is involved? Who confirmed the concern? And what stage has the process reached? Without answers to those questions, words like emergency and scandal become much stronger than the facts. Formula One is especially vulnerable to this problem because the cars are difficult to understand from the outside. Most fans cannot inspect the components. They cannot repeat load tests. They cannot see the internal structure. And they cannot access the complete technical data. That creates dependence. The public depends on teams, journalists, and the FIA to explain what is happening accurately. When that explanation is missing, speculation fills the gap. And speculation usually chooses the most dramatic version. A wing that bends. A hidden advantage. A failed inspection. A secret order to redesign the car. None of those details appears in this source. But once the phrase Macarena wing is attached to Red Bull and Ferrari, those possibilities begin to feel real. That is the first major warning. The source gives us regulatory activity. But not this regulatory activity. Lewis Hamilton's penalty stories do not prove a Red Bull wing problem. A British Grand Prix grid decision does not prove Ferrari is under emergency review. Pierre Gasly's restored Monaco podium does not prove a technical scandal involving either team. Those are separate cases. They involve separate people, separate events, and separate questions. Placing them beneath one dramatic title does not create a valid connection. It only creates the appearance of support. Imagine taking 4 real puzzle pieces from 4 different boxes. Each piece is genuine, but they do not form one picture. That is what appears to be happening here. The individual stories may be real. The combined conclusion is not demonstrated. And this matters because Red Bull and Ferrari are not ordinary names. They carry history, success, rivalry, and enormous attention. A technical allegation involving both teams will spread quickly because the audience already understands the stakes. If Red Bull loses performance, the championship could change. If Ferrari is forced to redesign a wing, its entire development path could be affected. If both teams are targeted by the same test, rivals could gain. Those consequences make the headline powerful. But consequences cannot be discussed as real until the underlying event is confirmed. And right now, it is not. There is no basis in the source for claiming that either team failed an inspection. No basis for claiming that either team was ordered to change its car. No basis for claiming that results are at risk. And no basis for claiming that the FIA uncovered an illegal mechanism. That may sound less dramatic than the headline. But it is the only conclusion supported by the material. Still, the controversy reveals something important about the modern Formula One news cycle. A story does not need complete evidence to become influential. It only needs a famous team, a technical mystery, an official-sounding organization, and a word that creates urgency. Emergency. That word tells the audience there is no time to wait. It tells people the situation is already serious. It encourages judgment before verification. And once the emotional reaction begins, later corrections rarely travel as far. The accusation gets the attention. The clarification gets ignored. By then, people already remember Red Bull, Ferrari, the FIA, and a suspicious wing. That memory may remain even if no official case ever appears. This is why accuracy is not the enemy of excitement. It is the only way the payoff can be trusted. A genuine technical review would be fascinating. How does the wing move? Why does the current test struggle to measure it? Did both teams discover the same idea? Would a stricter standard change the competitive order? Those are powerful questions. But first, the review must exist. The wing must be identified. And the technical concern must be explained. Without that foundation, the story is not exposing Red Bull and Ferrari. It is exposing how quickly unrelated FIA decisions can be turned into a completely different scandal. And that leads to the next major question. If no emergency review is confirmed in the source, why does the claim feel so believable? The answer lies in one of Formula One's oldest battles. The difference between a legal innovation, a gray area, and a design that finally crosses the line. And this is where the technical language becomes both powerful and dangerous. Because words like legal, illegal, and gray area sound simple. In Formula One, they are not. A legal design follows the written rules and passes the required tests. An illegal design clearly breaks those rules or fails those tests. A gray area sits between those two worlds. It may satisfy the exact wording. It may pass the official inspection. But it may still behave in a way the regulation was never meant to allow. That is where the real conflict begins. And it is why a supposed emergency review would matter so much if one were officially confirmed. The FIA would not simply be asking whether Red Bull or Ferrari built a fast wing. It would be asking whether the current rules can properly measure what that wing does. That is a much bigger question. Because a rule can be clear on paper and still become weak in practice. Teams study every sentence, every measurement, every test procedure. They do not only ask what the regulation says. They ask how the regulation will be enforced. That difference creates opportunity. Imagine a school rule that says students cannot cross a painted line. One student stands with both feet behind it, but leans so far forward that almost the entire body is beyond the boundary. Technically, the feet have not crossed, but everyone understands the rule is being pushed. Formula One teams operate with that same precision. They are not rewarded for staying comfortably inside the limit. They are rewarded for finding the exact edge. That does not make them dishonest. It makes them competitive. The problem appears when the edge becomes impossible to define. A wing may pass one test, then appear to move differently on track. A team may insist the part is legal. A rival may insist the test is incomplete. The FIA is then forced to decide whether the design should remain accepted, be monitored more closely, or be restricted through a new procedure. But the available source does not confirm that this process has happened with Red Bull or Ferrari. It does not show an official test result. It does not show a technical directive. And it does not show a ruling against either team. That means we cannot treat the supposed emergency review as established fact. Still, the idea behind it reveals why the story spread so quickly. A wing that changes its behavior under different loads could offer a valuable advantage. At lower speed, a team may want more aerodynamic grip. At higher speed, it may want less resistance. Normally, one setting compromises the other. More grip can create more drag. Less drag can reduce cornering support. But if the structure changes shape slightly as speed increases, the car may gain some of both. That sounds like the perfect solution. And perfect solutions always attract suspicion. The public sees movement and assumes illegality. Rival teams see movement and ask whether the test is strong enough. The team using the design sees a component that passed inspection. All three reactions can exist at the same time. That is why the exact test matters. Not the slow motion footage alone. Not the anger from a rival. Not the confidence of the accused team. The test. The rule. The result. Without those three things, nobody outside the process can know where innovation ends and illegality begins. And this is where the name Macarena creates even more mystery. A nickname can make a technical procedure feel dramatic. It gives the inspection an identity. It makes the audience imagine movement in several directions. It suggests a test designed to reveal behavior a simpler check might miss. But the source does not define the procedure. That detail is missing. So any explanation of how the so-called Macarena wing moves must remain general, not factual. We can discuss the principle. We cannot claim a specific mechanism was found. That line matters. Because technical misinformation becomes believable very quickly. One person says the wing twists. Another says it folds. Another claims it changes angle at high speed. Then somebody adds a hidden internal support. By the end, a completely unverified system sounds like an official discovery. But no such discovery appears in the source. What does appear is a collection of unrelated FIA stories. Lewis Hamilton. The British Grand Prix. Pierre Gasly. Those names create authority because they are connected to real regulatory decisions. But they do not establish a Red Bull and Ferrari wing review. That means the source gives us atmosphere, not proof. And atmosphere is enough to start a technical war. Rival teams do not need a complete case before they begin watching. They will study photographs. Compare old parts with new ones. Look for changes in shape. Monitor straight-line speed. Listen to every team radio message. And examine whether the cars behave differently after any new inspection. But even that evidence can be misleading. A car may lose speed because of weather. Because of setup. Because of tire conditions. Because of a different circuit. Because the team chose more downforce. Or because a new part simply did not work. One slower weekend does not prove that the FIA removed an illegal advantage. That conclusion requires much stronger evidence. But fans may not wait for it. If Red Bull struggles, some will say the wing was restricted. If Ferrari improves, others will say the team escaped scrutiny. If both teams change parts, people will call it an admission. The story begins interpreting every event in advance. That is dangerous because it removes the possibility of a neutral outcome. Every result becomes evidence for the rumor. And once a rumor works that way, it becomes almost impossible to disprove. That is why official clarity would matter so much. If a genuine review exists, the FIA should eventually explain what was being checked. Not every private technical detail, but enough to define the issue. Was the concern about deflection? Was it about how load was applied? Was it about an internal structure? Was it a general inspection affecting several teams? Was any action required? Those questions could settle the argument. But until they are answered, the accusation remains much larger than the evidence. And this is where Red Bull and Ferrari would face different kinds of pressure. Red Bull would be judged through its recent performance and its reputation for technical aggression.